Tesla's 100 days on the brink of bankruptcy. How Musk used his last $40 million to slap Detroit in the face. Christmas Eve, 2008. San Carlos, California. Tesla's headquarters. The lights were still on, but only one person remained. Elon Musk sat behind a cheap desk, staring at two financial statements. To his left was SpaceX. To his right, Tesla. 3 rockets had exploded in 1 year. Tesla had just 3 days of cash left. He added up everything he owned. It came to $40 million. Enough to save one company, or let both die. Outside, the giants of Detroit were lining up for a bailout in Washington. General Motors had lost $30 billion. Chrysler was on life support. Ford was selling its assets. They begged for money while mocking the madmen in Silicon Valley trying to build an electric car. Wall Street commentators said on live television that Tesla was the most likely company to go bankrupt in 2008.
No contest.
Musk stared at the 2 spreadsheets for a long time. Then he made a decision. That decision would make him the richest man in the world 12 years later, and would leave Detroit living in the shadow of humiliation forever. This is not a story about cars. It is a story about arrogance and prejudice, death and rebirth, and a man who, when the whole world said he was finished, bet his last dollar on himself. Part 1. The Gambler's Christmas. Let's rewind to January 2008. Tesla had just launched the Roadster, an electric sports car based on a Lotus Elise chassis. It went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.7 seconds, faster than a Porsche 911. The media cheered. An electric car that was finally not ugly, not slow, not boring. But nobody knew that Musk's personal bank account was almost empty. 2008 was the darkest year of Musk's life. SpaceX's Falcon 1 rocket failed 3 times in a row, in March, August, and November. First explosion.
Seconde explosion.
Third explosion. Engineers fell to their knees crying. Musk stood in the control room with a blank face. He later said that in that year, he woke up every morning with his pillow wet. Why? Because he had been crying in his sleep. At the same time, Tesla was being consumed by a death spiral. The Roadster's development cost had ballooned from an estimated $25 million to $140 million. The supply chain was breaking down. The transmission supplier delivered nothing but defective parts. Early customers had paid deposits 3 years earlier and still hadn't seen a car. Angry rich people formed an anti-Tesla alliance online and demanded refunds. Worse, in September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed and the global financial crisis erupted. The capital markets froze. Not a single venture capital firm was willing to put $1 into an electric car company that couldn't sell cars. By December, Tesla had less than $10 million in the bank, but the company was burning $4 million per month. That meant that by February 2009 at the latest, Tesla would be scrap metal. Musk's then wife, Tallulah Riley, recalled that Christmas. Musk barely spoke. He sat at home every day, staring at the ceiling for hours. She asked him what he was thinking. He said, "I'm calculating how to save 2 companies with $40 million. He didn't actually have $40 million anymore. He had poured all his PayPal money into SpaceX and Tesla. He was living in a friend's basement, unable to pay rent. He tried to borrow money from Warren Buffett and Google's Larry Page. Both said no. He even considered selling Tesla to Google for $60 million. Google said, "We don't buy garbage." That Christmas, Musk faced a choice: divide his last money between 2 doomed companies, or let one of them die completely. He chose neither. He would save both. Part 2. The golf cart strikes back. To understand why Detroit despised Tesla, you need to go back to the early 2000s. What did an electric car look like back then? Ugly. Slow. A moral lecture on wheels. General Motors EV1, the one crushed in the documentary who killed the electric car, looked like a flattened Beetle. Its range was barely 100 miles. Acceleration took forever. People who drove it were called environmentalists, not car enthusiasts. Traditional car culture worshipped big displacement, V8s, and exhaust notes. More cylinders meant more status. A Ferrari V12 screaming at 9,000 revolutions per minute. A Lamborghini V10 roaring like an enraged bull. An American muscle car's V8 making your chest vibrate at idle. That was a religion. And the electric car?
No noise. No shifting. No mechanical beauty.
To petrolheads, it was a refrigerator on wheels. Musk understood from day one that you cannot make a car lover buy an electric car by preaching about the environment. You have to make him think that this thing is cooler than his Porsche. That was Tesla's top-down strategy. Don't start with a cheap car. Start with a rich man's toy. The Roadster's positioning was brutally precise. Its target customers were not environmentalists, but Silicon Valley tech billionaires. These men drove Ferraris, wore Patek Philippe's, and lived in Atherton mansions. They didn't care about price, but they craved novelty. Musk said, "I want to build a car that makes Ferrari owners feel obsolete." How? With something traditional automakers could never understand: instant torque. An internal combustion engine needs high revs to deliver peak power. Your V8 idles at maybe 50 horsepower. You have to floor it, wait half a second for the intake, fuel injection, ignition, and exhaust to all work together, and then the power comes. That's why big, naturally aspirated engines are called high-revving engines. You have to keep the revs up on a racetrack to feel their magic. But an electric motor is different. It delivers peak torque from 0 RPM. The moment you step on the accelerator, the battery dumps thousands of amps into the motor, the magnetic field builds instantly, and the torque explodes.
No delay.
No waiting. That's not a push in the back. That's a wall hitting your spine. The Roadster did 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. In 2008, the Ferrari F430 did it in 3.9 seconds. An electric car, faster than a Ferrari. That number slapped Detroit across the face. You said electric cars are slow? I just beat your supercar. You said they're ugly? I made the Roadster a curve. You said they have no soul? My soul is making yours eat dust. From that moment on, Tesla was no longer an environmental brand. It was a performance brand. That was Musk's smartest move. He didn't try to change car culture. He shattered its core logic. If you believe speed is the only measure, then I will beat you on speed. Part 3. Business hell. But performance alone couldn't save cash flow. In 2008, Tesla was going through the most brutal supply chain nightmare in business history. The Roadster chassis came from Lotus in England. Lotus is a niche sports car maker famous for lightweight engineering, producing only a few thousand cars a year. Tesla bought the license for the Lotus Elise chassis and then had to stuff an entire electric powertrain into it. Battery pack, motor, inverter, cooling system, all into a chassis designed for a gasoline engine. Engineers cut the Lotus chassis, welded new brackets, redesigned the suspension. Lotus engineers looked at it and said, "You're insane." The bigger problem was the transmission. The Roadster needed a 2-speed gearbox, first gear for launch, second gear for top speed. But the motor's high torque shattered the gears every time. The supplier tried again and again. The gears kept breaking. Finally, the supplier said, "This cannot be built. Give up." Musk said, "No." He called his engineers together and said, "If our supplier can't do it, we'll do it ourselves. Design a transmission from scratch. Find our own factory." That was Tesla's first taste of vertical integration. When no one will help you, you do it yourself. At the same time, the traditional automotive supply chain was collectively humiliating Tesla. Tesla needed an air conditioning system. They approached a German supplier. The supplier said, "You build only a few hundred cars a year. Why would we set up a production line for you? Brake calipers?" An Italian supplier said, "Your order volume doesn't even meet our minimum." Seats. A US supplier said, "Your car is too niche." Not interested. Musk later recalled that in those days, he made countless phone calls, and every call had the same answer: no, no, no. But the real hell came from inside. Tesla's founder was Martin Eberhard, a hardware engineer. He started Tesla in 2003 with the simple idea of combining lithium-ion batteries with a sports car. In 2004, Musk joined as an investor and chairman, then gradually pushed Eberhard aside. Their conflict exploded during the Roadster's development. Eberhard believed the Roadster should be a pure sports car, lightweight, simple, extreme. Musk believed the Roadster should be not only fast, but also luxurious, with a big screen and electric door handles. Their disagreement was the first head-on clash between software thinking and hardware thinking. Eberhard represented the logic of traditional automotive engineering. A car is a collection of mechanical parts, and engineers call the shots. Musk represented the logic of Silicon Valley. A car is a software platform, and user experience calls the shots. In January 2008, Musk fired Eberhard. Eberhard sued Tesla for defamation and wrongful termination. The internal war made investors even more panicked. If you're fighting among yourselves, how can this company survive? Musk testified in court that Tesla survived precisely because he got rid of Eberhard. That statement later proved true. But at the time, everyone thought Musk was a dictator, a madman, an egomaniac who would drive the company into a grave. Part 4. The $40 million Trick. December 2008. Less than 100 days before Tesla would run out of money. Musk added up everything he had. He had sold his PayPal fortune for $180 million. Most of it was gone. He had $40 million left. That was his last ammunition. He was going to use it to fight a battle he was supposed to lose. He made a crazy decision. Put all $40 million into Tesla. Not half. Not 80%. All of it. At the same time, he told investors that he was putting in the same amount himself. But in truth, he was already empty. It was a gamble. It was also a lie. If Tesla failed, Musk would lose everything, including a place to sleep. But there was one problem. $40 million would only keep Tesla alive for a few months. He needed more money, and he needed it within days. He went to Google's Larry Page first. Page was his friend and an early Tesla investor. Musk said, "Lend me $50 million. Page said, "I can introduce you to some VCs." Musk said, "I don't want VCs. I want your money." Page hesitated. Later, Page recalled that he thought Tesla would most likely die, and he didn't want to throw his money into a fire pit. Musk then approached Russian mining tycoons, offering battery raw materials in exchange for equity. They said, "You Americans always oversell yourselves." No deal. He tried Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds. They said, "Electric cars? Toys. We only invest in oil." Wall Street commentators said on TV that Musk was Silicon Valley's biggest fraud and Tesla was the biggest bubble. Detroit CEOs wrote in internal emails that the South African thought he could build cars. He didn't even have a factory. Musk sat in his empty office, closed the windows, and drew the curtains. He didn't want anyone to see him cry. Then a miracle happened. On December 28, 2008, Musk received a phone call. On the line was a senior executive from Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes-Benz. They said, "We heard you're working on electric cars. Our engineers want to come see for themselves." Musk knew this was his last chance. Daimler was the most knowledgeable luxury car company in the world. If they validated Tesla's technology, the entire industry would look at Tesla differently. But Daimler gave him only 3 days. In 3 days, their engineering team would fly to Silicon Valley for a technical evaluation. Musk didn't have 3 days. Tesla's demonstration car had broken down during earlier tests. The motor was fried. The battery pack had overheated. Engineers worked around the clock and fixed the prototype in 48 hours. But Musk knew that fixing it wasn't enough. He had to shock the Germans. He did something only a Silicon Valley person would do. He converted a Smart 4.2, that tiny, bread loaf-shaped microcar, into an electric vehicle in just a few days. He ripped out the original 3-cylinder engine, stuffed in a Tesla motor and battery pack, and rewrote the control software. When Daimler's engineers walked into Tesla's workshop, they saw 2 cars. One was the repaired Roadster prototype. The other was the electric Smart. Musk tossed the keys to the Daimler engineers and said, "Drive it yourselves." The Germans got into the electric Smart and stepped on the accelerator. At that moment, they didn't feel the lethargy of a microcar. They felt a neck-snapping surge of acceleration. The converted car did 0 to 63 full seconds faster than the stock Smart. Daimler's chief engineer got out, took off his glasses, looked at Musk, and said, "You did this in a few days?" Musk said, 3 days. The Germans fell silent. They knew that if this had happened in Stuttgart, it would have taken 6 months, maybe a year. But the Silicon Valley people had done it in 3 days. That was the gap between Silicon Valley speed and traditional automotive engineering. Daimler's engineers worked inside a system where every decision required layers of approval and every part had to pass endless tests. Tesla's engineers could build a car from scratch in 3 days because they didn't follow the rules. They rewrote them. In January 2009, Daimler announced a $50 million investment in Tesla, acquiring 10% of the company. The money itself was not huge, but it was the most important investment of all, because Daimler was the godfather of traditional automotive engineering. When the godfather handed the heretic a ticket, everyone else followed. After the announcement, Tesla's valuation soared. Investors began to look at the company with new eyes. Toyota then invested another $50 million and sold its NUMMI factory to Tesla at a very low price. That factory later became Tesla's Fremont plant, where the Model S, Model 3, and Model Y were built. Musk had won. With his last $40 million, he had levered Daimler's $50 million, and with Daimler's endorsement, he had levered the entire capital market. This was not magic. This was a gambler pushing all his remaining chips to the center of the table and drawing an ace. Part 5. The Logic of a Trillion-Dollar Empire. In June 2010, Tesla went public on the Nasdaq, raising $226 million. It was the first American car company to go public since Ford in 1956. But what truly terrified Detroit was not the IPO. It was Tesla's underlying logic. That logic took traditional automakers 10 years to even begin to understand. Many still haven't learned it. How do traditional car makers build a car? They come up with a concept, draw a sketch, build a clay model, then hand it to the engineering team. The engineering team designs the engine, transmission, chassis, and body, then hands it to the purchasing team. The purchasing team buys parts from hundreds of global suppliers, then assembles them into a car. The whole process takes 5 to 7 years. This is classic hardware thinking. A car is a collection of mechanical parts. To upgrade it, you need to retool, retest, recertify, expensive and slow. So traditional car makers launch a new generation every 5 years, with only minor updates in between. They trickle out technology like squeezing toothpaste, so each generation has something new to sell. Tesla never did that. Musk is not a car guy. He is an internet guy. From his PayPal days, he knew that software can update every day, but hardware cannot. What is Tesla's first principle? A car is a computer on wheels. That shift in thinking made Tesla's business model completely different. A traditional car maker sells you a car, and the transaction ends. Tesla sells you a car, and the transaction has just begun. Because Tesla cars receive over-the-air, OTA, updates, constantly gaining new features. The car you buy today might get an autonomous driving function tomorrow, a 5% power increase next week, and a heated rear seat unlock next month. To traditional car makers, this sounds like science fiction. To Tesla, it is routine. It is like when Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, and Nokia said, "It's not durable, the battery can't be swapped, the keyboard is bad." Nokia looked at hardware. Apple looked at software. We know how that ended. Tesla's software subscription services are becoming the app store of the automotive industry. Full self-driving costs $10,000. Acceleration boost costs $2,000. Rear heated seats cost $300. The marginal cost of these features is almost zero, but customers are willing to pay for them because they are not paying for a feature. They are paying for the possibility of continuous evolution. In October 2021, Tesla's market capitalization exceeded $1 trillion. Elon Musk became the richest person in the world. What did that $1 trillion mean? It meant that the capital markets believed Tesla's business model was worth more than all the traditional automakers combined. Not because Tesla built more cars, but because it defined a new set of rules. In that new rulebook, Detroit's 100 years of accumulated knowledge was almost worthless. V8 engine? Unnecessary. Transmission? Unnecessary. Complex mechanical all-wheel drive? Unnecessary. Tesla replaced the internal combustion engine, transmission, and drive shaft with an electric motor, battery, and code. It reduced the number of core parts in a car from tens of thousands to a few thousand. That is why Tesla's gross margin exceeds 30%, while traditional automakers are at 10 to 15%. Tesla builds its own batteries, its own motors, writes its own software, and sells its own cars.
No dealership middlemen.
It is the ultimate form of vertical integration, a form forced upon Tesla because nobody in the traditional supply chain would help them. Detroit took a full decade to react. General Motors launched its first long-range electric car, the Bolt, in 2016. Ford launched the Mustang Mach-E in 2020. Volkswagen launched its ID series in 2021. By then, Tesla had already sold more than 1 million cars. In 2022, Wall Street commentators admitted that they had been wrong in 2008. Musk was not a fraud. He was a gambler who, when everyone else had given up, bet his last dollar on his own dream. Epilogue. That Christmas of 2008, Musk won back far more than $40 million. He won the only ticket to the industrial throne of the 21st century. Today, when you sit in a Tesla, press the accelerator, and feel that instant, lag-free surge of power, you are not just feeling the torque of an electric motor. You are feeling the force of a man who, when the whole world said no, used his last strength to slap the world in the face. The old aristocrats of Detroit are still learning how to build an electric car. Musk has already moved on to building rockets, because he knew from the beginning that the car was never the destination. It was just a ticket to Mars. This was Tesla's 100 days on the brink of bankruptcy.